President Trump has long had an ironclad grip on his party, but this week showed some real cracks and raising some larger questions for the president as Republicans begin to worry about their own political fortunes, not his. The GOP revolt demanding the release of the Epstein files and effectively backing the president into a corner was the most dramatic example of that. Yet his ability to strike fear into wobbly Republicans is still stronger than ever. His zero tolerance for any dissent set the stage for the stunning and abrupt resignation of his one-time MAGA loyalist, Marjorie Taylor Greene. But how long will most Republicans continue to toe the line, given that Trump is facing some of the worst poll numbers of his time in office? Yet overnight, Trump continued to press a feud with Democrats that have left many in his party uncomfortable, as he renews demands for 6 Democrats to be jailed for urging members of the military to disobey unlawful orders. Let's break this all down with my excellent panel this morning. Anna Palmer of Punchbowl News, CNN's David Chalianen, and Seung-Min Kim of the Associated Press. Good morning to you all. David Chalianen, I want to start with you to set the stage of where we are in Trump's presidency right now, because we are seeing numbers that are not good for the president, that have been very bad, which we'll get into in a second here. We saw what happened with Marjorie Taylor Greene, her abrupt resignation. We saw what happened with the Epstein files and these fractures within the party. Is this a natural place where a president would be at this point in his presidency, in his second term, or is this a larger and more worrying sign for the White House?
Well, I think both things can be true. I do think it could be, it is a natural point for somebody serving a second term. Remember, you start serving your second term, as soon as you put your hand on the Bible on Inauguration Day, you are technically a lame duck, right? The Constitution says so. Now, I don't want to take away, Donald Trump, as we all know and have covered for a decade, there is no politician who has as strong a connection with his core base of support as Donald Trump does with his. We just haven't covered someone like that. And I'm not sure that is irreparably broken in this moment. But I do think for somebody who has defied political reality time and again, it does catch up with you. And by the way, Donald Trump himself diagnosed this just 3 weeks ago when the Democrats had those sweeping victories in the elections. What did he say the next morning? He said, well, I think one of the biggest problems is I wasn't on the ballot.
Yeah.
And that is going to be true. And I think his party, certainly the Epstein situation was a catalyst for this, and those election results have started having a conversation now about, he's not going to be on the ballot again. So what does this Republican coalition look like post-Trump?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And the question is, how does the White House deal with this? Because we're seeing all these fractures, and this is just a handful of them. And just in recent days, everything from the Epstein files is pushed back within the Indiana state legislature over redistricting. The Republicans, were pushing them to change the Senate filibuster rules. They've said no to that. He's called on Democrats to be jailed, as he did last night. A lot of Republicans very uncomfortable with that. And then the news that's going to really dominate this week, this Russia-Ukraine peace plan that a lot of Republicans see as a total capitulation to Russia. And you're already hearing that from some of the more establishment Republicans. Seung-Min, you cover the White House. Is there a fear that this lame duck, David's right, you're a lame duck the moment you put your hand on the oath of, when you take that oath of office on January 20th in your second term. Is there a fear that his grip is slipping in any way within the White House?
I think you can look at the resignation of Marjorie Taylor Greene on Friday night as a sign that it's not. She specifically pointed to a potentially very bruising primary after having lost President Trump's support, which shows just how strong that political power is within the Republican Party. Now, for the broader electorate, for the midterms in 2026, that's certainly a different question. You're seeing the White House not only talk a lot about messaging and talking about his accomplishments in a more fulsome way. President Trump certainly pointed to that as a potential political problem, that you just need to kind of talk about his accomplishments more. But you do see how they're also slightly recalibrating their policies to address the big issue, the big issue right now, which is the affordability crisis and the cost of things. You saw them remove some tariffs from Brazilian goods this past week in an attempt to lower those costs, even though there wasn't a major fanfare when the president did that.
So things are doing, without trying to say it, look like they're pivoting when they are pivoting.
Exactly, because President Trump, again, fundamentally believes in tariffs. You're not going to bring him off that, but that to me showed me there is a need for some recalibration of these policies to make sure that the American consumers aren't being hurt.
Yeah, and there's always this point where the party starts to freak out. Okay, I'm not sure we were at that point yet. We saw that, in presidents as they head into midterms. This has happened with Barack Obama back in 2010. We saw that Tea Party wave happen, and one of his chief political analyst of CNN, but his former political advisor, David Axelrod, said this to the New York Times just a few days ago. He said, unless the economy and his numbers rebound, Republicans are going to feel less willing to follow him blindly. And that trend will accelerate once election filing periods pass in individual states and they are clear of potential primary challenges that he holds over their heads. And it's a good point, because there are big filing deadlines. The two have actually already passed, Illinois and Arkansas. There are a bunch coming up in Texas and Georgia, Pennsylvania, California, Kentucky, and North Carolina. But there's always that moment where Republicans down ticket start to want nothing to do with the president. The problem is that this president demands loyalty at all costs.
I mean, I think this is the challenge for Republicans, is the fact that they're trying to figure out what they're going to run on, right? The one big beautiful bill did not do well in terms of message testing. They've tried to recalibrate. I think they just came off the longest shutdown in U.S. history. And now Republicans are saying, what are we going to run on in 2026? And so that's why you're starting to see all this activity when it comes to potentially extending the Obamacare, COVID subsidies and other things, because they are looking, at their future, saying this is going to be a really challenging time, especially if the economy doesn't do really well, especially if inflation, if tariffs continue to actually hurt people back home. They're really worried about their future, and we see that time and time again, and we're starting to see it on the Hill, right? You saw it this week when it comes to some of these appropriations bills. They're not doing spending levels that Donald Trump wants. They're doing much higher spending bills that are being led by Senate Republicans.
I mean, can Trump just cheerlead and say the economy is going great, everyone listen to me, the economy is going great, and hope that voters believe him? He said that over Truth Social this weekend. Everything is going great in the economy. He said, my poll numbers are the best. Well, I mean, look at what the actual poll numbers say, the public poll numbers. Fox News poll just from this past week. This is on the economy. Look how much it has changed for him, approve versus disapprove. He's lost he's got 5 points in the wrong direction on disapproval when it comes to the economy. That's from March to November. 61% of the American public, the registered voters in this poll, disapprove. And then you break down among his approval rating among subgroups. White voters, especially white working class voters, that is his base. He is down 7 points in terms of approval from March until now. And black voters, which he did much better with in the last cycle, he's now at 12% approval in this poll. David, what is your takeaway from that?
Well, I think this was also reflected in the elections in New Jersey and Virginia, that we saw that some of the pieces of his coalition that proved so successfully put together for him just a year ago drifted away. You see Hispanics in that poll showing flat, but we saw them drift away in the elections. Independents had drifted away. So there are key pieces of his coalition that clearly have sort of reverted back to where they were before he put that together a year ago. I would just note, though, as you said, the piece about the economy, and can Donald Trump just say what isn't true for people's lived experience? I would argue that the administration itself broadly doesn't think he can, because we just heard J.D. Vance, his vice president this week, take a different message out in public than the president usually does. It wasn't, this isn't true, everything's fine. It was, we hear you. And it was a plea for patience that this will take some time. Convinced that the economy will get where it needs to go for the American people, but an acknowledgement from J.D. Vance that we don't usually hear from President Trump.
I mean, is this why when Trump had this, what many people are calling a love fest with Trump and Mamdani at the White House, is this why, because of the acknowledgement implicit that it is, that Trump realizes that he has to shift on this issue? Or is it just because Mamdani was being very nice to him?
Well, it's also like Trump likes winners and Mamdani is a winner. I'm not sure it's more complicated than that. It did seem like before the press was brought in, they did have a very cordial meeting. I'm sure Mamdani, we were told that he had gotten some advice on how to handle these Oval Office meetings from his fellow New York counterparts who had been in these types of situations before. But I do think a lot of it is, Trump respects winners. He obviously had a resounding election in New York. And I think when the mayor-elect told the president that, 1 in 10 of my voters were your voters, I think that kind of helped bridge any sort of divide that they may have had.
Very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this money's a message for Republicans. This is not the side-by-side they wanted. They wanted to tie Democrats to social Democrats, Mamdani, and run on it all during 2026, and now you've got a bear hug by the president.
I think that comment about at least Stefanik's criticism when he was asked about that, and that was a remarkable moment when Trump tamped that down. Oh boy.